So we're going to work on several concepts in this lesson. It's really important for all theory students to be very familiar with the piano keyboard. Whether you play the piano or not, the piano is an incredibly important tool for studying music theory. Your experience might be a wind instrument, the trumpet or the flute, or you're a singer, guitar, and all those things are helpful, but not as helpful as the piano keyboard. And here's why. Because in music, you're familiar with the alphabet, A through G, and then it repeats. There are 7 letters in music. And you're probably familiar enough with the piano keyboard that you know that there's white notes and then a raised keyboard of black notes. And it's easy math. There are 7 white notes and there are 5 black notes, 12 notes in all. And we can use the piano keyboard, as I said, as a tool for learning all kinds of music theory concepts, beginning with note names, letter names, sharps, flats, and then working on intervals. And from intervals, we build chords, triads, and eventually melodies. All music comes out of one note after another, an interval after another, building melodies with intervals. So it's a really, really important tool. So the objective here is for you to be familiar with the piano keyboard to the point where you don't have to play. It's great if you can. If you have a piano keyboard at home and you can practice it, that's even better. And if you don't have one, you can always do virtual on your computer, at least to become familiar with the note names. First, let's talk about letter names and where they are on the piano. Again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? If I were teaching beginning piano players, especially a little kid, I'd start with the note D. And actually, let's back up one step and just look at the black notes. And you've seen the pattern before. The pattern repeats. And keyboards have been built this way for about 500 years now, with this division of notes. And those raised keys are in groups of 3 and groups of 2s. So little kids, I tell them to make the Scots honor and a peace sign. And these kind of start as reference points, a point of departure. And again, now back to D. So it's really simple, simpler than any other instrument. Find the 2 black key set and play the white note that's in between those 2 black notes. And that's the letter D in the music alphabet. Really easy, right? And we can use that now and go either down, and down on the piano is to the left. The bass notes are way down here on the left end. Or we can go up, and the treble notes or high notes are way up here on the right end. So let's begin by going down. Here's D. So one step below it is the note C. And you can learn C by looking at it. It's right before 2 black notes. Let's go the other way. Here's D, and we'll go one note higher, and it's E. So it's really easy. We'll start on D and keep going up. D, E, F, G, A. I sort of paused on G. What comes after G? So there's no H in music. We go G, A. Okay? So, again, if you forget, start with D. D's in between the 2 black notes and a 2 black key set. Okay, so there's your white notes of the piano. All right, so here are the white notes again. D. I'm just playing from D to D. So let's talk about the black notes. Lots of people will tell you that, well, the sharps and flats are the black notes, and that's not wrong, but it's not completely true either. There's 7 notes in music, A through G, and all of them can be sharped or raised, and all of them can be lowered or flatted. But there's 7s, and there's only 5 black notes, so where are those other sharps and flats? Well, let's take it a step at a time, and first of all, make sure you know where the sharps are. Let's start on that familiar note again, D. And if we raise it or go to the right, make it higher, 1/2 step, now we're playing a black note. Its letter name is D sharp, okay? Here's D, here's D sharp. If we go to the left or lower it, here's D, and here's D flat. So for 5 of the white notes, it seems pretty straightforward. C, C sharp, D, D sharp. Let's go here, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp. Now if you kept track, what are the 2 notes that I skipped? I didn't do E. Here's an E. Now where's that black note for E sharp? And obviously there isn't one. So sharps are really 1/2 step higher. If I raise the note E up a 1/2 step, you're thinking he's playing an F. You're right, but its relationship to E is this is E, this is E sharp, okay? This is called an enharmonic spelling. This note has more than one name. E, E sharp. It's very similar to English. The word there has 3 spellings, T-H-E-R-E, T-H-E-I-R, T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E. And in English we say there, all 3 of them, but they have 3 different meanings depending on context. So this note can be F, if you're playing in the key of F, which I'm getting a little too far ahead, but it can also be the note E sharp, okay? So we'll talk more about that later. That's enough of that for now. What I want you to do this week is just become familiar with the white notes, D through D, and we're going to work on 2 black notes. The note F sharp, here's F, a 1/2 step higher. And we're going to work on the note B flat. Here's B, and lower is B flat. Let's talk about steps on the piano keyboard, whole steps and 1/2 steps, okay? So a whole step in music is when you go from one letter to the next letter. So back to those white notes again. I'm going to start on the note C. A whole step above C is the next white note. It's also the next letter in the music alphabet. This is C, and this is D. A whole step above D is E. Now, if we take that whole step and split it, we have a black note in between it. So from here to here is half of that whole, or a 1/2 step. So the 1/2 steps on the piano are 2 adjacent keys. It doesn't matter what color they are. If they are the next key up or the next key down, they're a 1/2 step. And so now, if you look at 2 1/2 steps, and we'll go backwards, from this note C to the black note, up another 1/2 step to D. It's just another way to see that CD is a whole step. Now there's a couple places where this gets a little tricky. If you look at the note E, if you go one note higher, there's no black note there. So by our definition, these two keys are adjacent. So even though they're both white, they are also a half step. So a whole step is 2 half steps. Here's the note E. This black note, F sharp, is the whole step above E. So I have whole steps and half steps. Another interesting whole step is if I start on this black note. A half step above it is a white note, and 2 half steps is a whole step. So this note's name is E flat. Up to here is F. So that gives you an idea of whole steps and half steps. I want to talk about octaves in the note names of the piano. Here's that D in between 2 black keys. And we know after the note G, we go back to A. So this is A, B, C, D. So these 2 Ds, they're actually 8 steps away from each other in the music alphabet. And because they're 8 steps away from each other, like the octopus has 8 legs, or the stop sign, octagon, has 8 sides. In music, this is an octave. Now, octaves are really important for a number of reasons, but what I want you to be able to do is, once you are real familiar with the letter names of the piano keyboard, is also to identify them by octaves. So the piano has one of the widest range of all music instruments. Singers typically have a range of about 2.5 octaves. Really good singers might have 3 or more. Most of the wind instruments have a range of about 3 octaves. String instruments a little wider, but the piano is actually 8 octaves plus a couple extra notes. And using the piano keyboard, again, is really important for music theory because it's the piano keyboard that music theorists use to number octaves. So we go all the way to the bass end of the piano. And this is the lowest C on the piano keyboard. And this is C1, the first octave. If we go up an octave higher, this is C2. All the notes in between are called the first octave. So this is C1, D1, E1, F1, G1, A1, B1, and then we're at C2. Now, there are 8 of these in all. C1, C2, C3, C4. We're going to pause for a minute on C4. You probably already know this. C4 has another name, which is middle C. When I was a kid learning piano, I always thought that middle C was called middle C because it was in the middle of the piano keyboard. And the teacher told me to sit in front of middle C. But it's not actually true. There are more notes to the right or higher of middle C than there are to the left. So it's not actually in the middle. It is in the middle of the grand staff, and we'll get to that another time. So let's just continue with our octaves. This is C4, C5, C6, C7. The highest note on the piano keyboard is C8. So back to C1. I showed you that all the notes in here are the first octave, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So in the second octave, the same thing is true. D2, D3, and so on. Middle C, C4, D4, E4, and so on. C5, D5, E5, and so on. And you might wonder, finally, there's a couple notes way down here. A B flat, and an A. They have a lot of dust on them on my piano because you hardly ever play them. And this is called the suboctave or the zero octave, B0 and A0. So that's it for octaves. So in your note naming exercises, you're also going to have to name them. This is an F, you're correct, but which F is it? It's above C4, it's in the middle, it's in the fourth octave, so this is F4. That's it.